Hello to all of you truth-seeking, free-thinking, freedom-loving patriots out there. Welcome to the Canada Truth Channel, where Canada, the illusion of freedom and system of control, is exposed. Today, we have 3 levels of war. Why is this important to understand? Well, ladies and gentlemen, like it or not, we are at war. And we have been at war for a long, long time. Albeit a quiet war using silent weapons, we are at war. Some people call this war good versus evil. Some people say it's a war between the 1% and the 99%. Some people say it's a war of freedom versus tyranny. Some people say it's a war of the rule of law versus the color of law. No matter what you want to call it, we are at war. To keep things simple, I'll call it the war of good versus evil. The good represented by the 99% of the population, the evil represented by the 1% of the population that actually controls the world, whom I consider to be diabolical and absolutely evil. The people of the world did not declare this war. We did not ask for this war. We are not willing participants in this war. However, we are now forced to defend ourselves in this war or face the consequences for generations to come. And I'll quote George Orwell from 1984. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stomping on a human face forever. This is basically their announced strategic objective in this war: to control absolutely every aspect of human life on this planet. They're no longer hiding it. It is in our face, out in the open. You can read it through their own documents. You can hear it through their own words. They've come to a point of desperation where it is all or nothing. Now, the 3 levels of war: strategic, operational, and tactical. As I've just said, our adversary, the evil side of this war, their strategic objective is to control every aspect of human life on this planet. Operationally, their campaigns and major operations include global warming. Give up your rights and freedoms to save the planet. The war on terror. Give up your rights and freedoms so we can protect you against the terrorists. COVID. Give up your rights and freedoms so we can save the world from COVID. And on and on and on and on. These are their operations. And tactically, as we have illustrated in previous videos, PSYOP operations in the 21st century and reflexive control, some of the tactics they use: distraction, overload, paralysis, exhaustion, deception, divisive techniques, pacification, deterrence, provocation, suggestion, and pressure. These are only 11 tactics they use. The tactics are the battles or engagements that stem from the campaigns and major operations, which are implemented to achieve the strategic objective of controlling every aspect of human life on this planet. Like I've said in previous videos, unless we have knowledge and understanding of the weapons being deployed against us, we have little chance in defending ourselves and no chance in defeating them. Not only do we have to understand ourselves and our adversaries, we also have to have thorough knowledge and understanding of war itself, because we are at war, like it or not. In this war of good versus evil, there are many, many, many groups fighting on the good side for truth, justice, and freedom, all of whom have their own strategic objectives, their own campaigns and operations, and their own tactics. I believe that the overall strategic objective should be the restoration of truth, justice, and freedom to the people of the world. It's simple, straightforward, to the point. Some people out there will say, well, that's 3 objectives: truth, justice, and freedom. And I would argue that it's 1 objective due to the fact that the 3 are interrelated and interdependent. You can't have one without the other. You can't have truth without freedom and justice. You can't have justice without truth and freedom. And you can't have freedom without truth and justice. So they are 1 strategic objective, personally to me. Operationally, I have an information campaign, and I also am developing a legal campaign. Tactically, I've developed tactics for each. How I'm employing my educational campaign and what tactics I'm going to use in my legal campaign in the courts. All that long-winded introduction over. Let's get into it. So 3 levels of war from the United States Air Force, College of Aerospace Doctrine, Research and Education, or cadre. I love research papers, as I'm sure you're all aware. Modern military theory divides war into strategic, operational, and tactical levels, as we've seen from the previous diagram. The 3 levels allow causes and effects of all forms of war and conflict to be better understood, despite their growing complexity. To understand modern theories of war and conflict and to prosecute them successfully, the military professional must thoroughly understand the 3 levels, especially the operational level, and how they are interrelated. Once again, as I've said many, many times before, you cannot defend yourself against a weapon that you do not know or understand. American system, the strategic level is usually the concern of national command authorities. And the highest military commanders, the operational level is usually the concern of theater commands, and the tactical level is usually the focus of sub-theater commands. And if you look back in history, look back to World War II, the Allies, there was Winston Churchill, there was Roosevelt, who were the top dogs, strategic planning. Then there were the European theater overall commander was Eisenhower. And under Eisenhower was Montgomery and Patton and so on and so forth. Under those guys, there was the majors, the captains and lieutenants and sergeants and so forth. So the strategic level, the president and the joint chiefs of staff. The operational level would be the overall commanding general, and the tactical level would be the boots on the ground, officers in charge. Each level is concerned with planning, making strategy, which involves analyzing the situation, estimating friendly and enemy capabilities and limitations, and devising possible courses of action. Corresponding to the strategic, operational, and tactical levels of war and conflict are national or grand strategy with its national military strategy subcomponent, operational strategy, and battlefield strategy or tactics. Each level also is concerned with implementing strategy, which must be reevaluated constantly and usually on the basis of incomplete information, because warfare is dynamic. Therefore, a key to success in war and other conflicts is the ability to adapt rapidly to the changing situation and to exploit transient opportunities rather than strictly adhering to a predetermined course of action. The ability to adapt and exploit requires extraordinary judgment, a feel for the situation, and knowing what to do and how to do it. Exercise of this judgment is the art of war at each level. And like I've said repeatedly, we can't rely on one operation or one strategy. Because, for example, constitutional convention. We can have constitutional conventions, write our own constitution, and present it to the government, and they may say, nope, forget it. Or we may want to establish common law courts, and the justice system denies it. And then, therefore, if you base your whole strategy on one component, it usually fails. The strategic level focuses on defining and supporting national policy and relates directly to the outcome of a war or other conflict as a whole. Usually, modern wars and conflicts are won or lost at this level rather than at the operational or tactical levels. Again, if we look back at history, this is proven to be absolutely true. The sound strategic operational strategic objective in World War II was to defeat the Axis powers. And they were successful. If you look at Vietnam, they didn't really have a strategic objective. Although they won most of the battles in Vietnam, operationally and tactically, the U.S. was successful, strategically they lost the war due to poor strategic planning. The operational level is concerned with employing military forces in a theater of war or theater of operations to obtain an advantage over the enemy and thereby attaining strategic goals through the design, organization, and conduct of campaigns and major operations. So again, if we look back at World War II, the objective was to defeat the Axis powers. There were many operations. There were several theaters of war. So you look at the European theater of war, the Pacific theater of war, the African theater of war, and there was operations in each. Operation Torch, Operation Overlord, Operation Market Garden, Operation Dragoon, Operation Mincemeat, and all those operations deployed some of the same and some different tactics, depending on the situation. The tactical level. In traditional sense, the various operations that make up a campaign are themselves made up of maneuvers, engagements, and battles. From this perspective, the tactical level translates potential combat power into success in battles and engagements through decisions and actions that create advantages when in contact with or in proximity to the enemy. However, combat is not an end in itself. It is the means to achieve goals set at the operational level. Excuse me. Benefits of thinking of war as divided into 3 levels are explained in the Chris Bellamy Trends in Land Warfare, the Operational Art of the European Theater. Very interesting book. And again, we have from Lieutenant General B.C. Hosmer, Operational Art, the importance of the operational level of war. The essence of the operational level of war is discovering the enemy's strategy and developing a counter-strategy. This corresponds with Clausewitz's idea that the enemy is an animate object that reacts. Emphasis in original. Clausewitz on 149. Consequently, we must understand and react to the enemy's mindset. Operational strategy as the art and science of planning, orchestrating, and directing military campaigns within a theater of operations to achieve a national security objectives. That was from Drew and Snow. So operational, the art and science of planning, orchestrating, and directing military campaigns within a theater of operation to achieve national security objectives. Again, back to World War II. If you want to look at operations, again, in each theater of war, there was different operations. Operation Overlord and Operation Market Garden in the European theater, for example. Operation Torch, I believe, was the invasion of Italy. I could be wrong. I've got a lot in my head. Anyway, Drew and Snow define battlefield strategy or tactics. I would disregard strategy. Define battlefield tactics as the art and science of employing forces on the battlefield to achieve national security objectives. The classic differentiation between tactics and higher levels of strategy or levels of war remains relevant in the sense that tactics govern the use of forces on the battlefield, while grand strategy or national military strategy and operational strategy bring forces to the battlefield. Tactics are concerned with doing the job right, and higher levels of strategy are concerned with doing the right job. So the strategic objective needs to be the correct strategic objective. And the operational objectives need to support the implementation of the strategic objectives. So, a basic overview of the 3 levels of war. And again, if we jump back and look at our freedom movement as a whole, as I said before, there's a whole bunch of different groups that have their own strategic objectives. One group, create a government by the people for the people through constitutional conventions. That's the strategic objective of that group. Restore common law to the land and the people. That is a strategic objective of yet another group. Hold the government to account through the legal system and their own acts, statutes, regulations, and codes. That's another strategic objective. And each have their own operations, and each have their own tactics. Now, that may be somewhat effective, but to identify and embrace an overall strategic objective to restore truth, justice, and freedom to the people of the world, I think can be easily agreed upon. Operationally, within that strategic objective, groups can pursue separate campaigns, separate major operations, all working towards achieving the strategic objective of restoring truth, justice, and freedom to the people of the world.